Hello, my name is Cranfield. I am the owner and founder of Holistic SEO and Digital. In this video, we will be talking about the semantic search, its definition, also again the semantic SEO, and their connections to the predicates, or why the predicates or the verbs are the most important terms inside the queries to understand the context, and why it is really important for neural matching or any kinds of index construction or query processing, query writing, and query augmentation, and many other things. In the previous video, we couldn't actually process these research papers and the patterns for query processing. In this video, we will be doing it. And in terms of the semantic search, this specific case that actually has been written like last year, May, but I couldn't publish it. Today, I updated many sections inside the case study. I actually, let's say, augmented the case study a little bit further. And now in this video, in a quick way, we will be processing these things. So if you want to understand, or let's say if you are a beginner and if you want to understand what semantic search is and why the predicates or the verbs are really important for that, and why the concept of FrameNet, we call it like this, is really important to understand the semantic search, you can actually make a quick research for FrameNet. But still, even if you just read this specific case study or watch with this video, you will be getting the most of the basics. Basically, FrameNet, it focuses on predicates and it tries to understand the concepts or patterns that can actually appear around the predicates. If you go to a restaurant, inside the restaurant, there is a limitation for the predicates that you can actually use, which means that there is a limitation for the things that you can do inside the restaurant. You can order, you can eat, you can clean, you can serve, or you can be served, or you can wait, meet, or you can actually just watch around, watch other people, listen other people, or learn something, etc. But whatever the predicate is, entire context will be determined, and according to the predicate that has been chosen, the object and the subject definitions and also connections will be made, which again will be affecting the macro context of the document. And based on this specific macro context, the query processing, augmentation, and query document matching will be happening. This is also called triple indexing, but it is also important for object attribute value data structures, which will be the next video topic. So I actually use this specific name here, understanding the verbs of life, because every verb that we use inside our lives or daily life, they are actually creating these semantic structures or the FrameNets structures. You can actually use FrameNets with the natural language toolkit to understand what kinds of frames appear or exist and how you can actually try to leverage it even further to understand the semantics, let's say. And with that said, in that area, and with that said, in this section actually, if you want to construct any kinds of semantic network, or any kinds of knowledge base, you will realize that any kinds of verb form, or lemmatized version of the specific verb, or stemming for these verbs, they will be creating actually different types of structures or different types of semantic networks with different types of, let's say, connections. And all these connections and associations will be helping to you for creating topical maps, achieving topical authority, and managing actually semantic and holistic SEO projects. And inside the course or semantic SEO course, you will realize that the steps that you will need to follow for semantics, it doesn't have that much standardization. Most of the steps will be coming from that specific topic, and for every topic, and sometimes for every query, for every other part of the specific, let's say, context, the steps or the approaches or the content brief or topical map creation methodologies, they will be changing. And that's why if you're able to understand the verbs or verb structure, it will be really beautiful. It will be really useful for you. When it comes to the project here, I already published this project. And again, in the previous video, I told that there is something called actual topical map distortion. In other words, usually when I create a project and then when I leave the project, the clients realize that whatever they write for, they start to rank higher and higher and higher. Then because of that, actually, they start to exploit this topical authority to open unnecessary pages while actually diluting the contextual relevance and also diluting the ranking signals. And eventually it creates a kind of, let's say, quality decrease site-wide, and it affects the rankings after a core update. So because of that, actually, while examining this specific website, you should remember it. And I will suggest you to actually examine the previous quality and templates of the previous content and also the new content. You will realize that how different these things are actually from each other. So templates or the patterns, these are always key for semantic search. And if the document template is not good as before, and also the overall quality of the documents, if they are not good as before, it will be again affecting your rankings. And I don't want to show these things all the time, but I know that you don't watch all the videos. That's why I actually mentioned the quality threshold case study here. You can actually check it directly. It will be explaining these concepts. With the 27 articles, it explains how we actually rank higher, and this specific video will be helpful in other words for you to understand these. So you see that the website already was inside the actual positive ranking state, even if it was actually losing traffic after this core algorithm update. There is a decrease here, you realize, but it still didn't stop us from creating this big jump, because just before a trending search event, I launched 2 different semantic content networks that actually completes each other. And once I actually launch it, I was able to use this trending search event for re-ranking purposes. If you want to understand the re-ranking, I will suggest you to actually read my How Does Google Rank Search case study. It will be really useful for see these connections. I also have some videos in my YouTube channel to explain these Google's initial ranking and re-ranking phases and their algorithms for that. And this specific video, some of these things actually explain these trending events. And if you read for creating semantic content networks case study in this part, you can realize that in some sections I tell that the third content network actually is not published on this specific website. It is important to understand the previous video that I published. In the previous video, I explained how you can actually build topical maps and expand topical maps for existing projects. And there I also explained the topical gaps and the topical consolidation further. So in this case, the third network or the third content network that I didn't publish for this project, it was actually putting the specific project into a risk, because the things are not connected to each other. If you want to understand how you can connect all these things to each other, you should watch the previous video. If you want to understand how predicates actually helped you for this specific thing, watch this one. If you want to understand how you can actually use the lexical relations or lexical semantics for topical maps or overall topical authority, try to please watch this video, because there are 26 websites on this specific case study and all of them use lexical semantics. So since I explained the background of the case study, timing or its current state, and also why I didn't publish, I will explain why I didn't publish the third content network and why actually it creates a topical gap. And if you also want to understand topical consolidation, try to watch this video. So everything that I tell, they are connected to each other. If you want to understand this video, you should be watching other previous ones and also read the specific articles. 3 weeks later, by the way, this graph, it became like this, and this was the situation from SEMrush. You can and 3 weeks later it became like this, and you can realize that actually the website, it always continued to rank higher and higher. But let's talk about how we actually use these predicate connected associations between different patterns and semantic search behaviors. So when it comes to the specific website, it is actually an education website. Basically, we try to focus on, let's say, people that want to learn new type of skills. If you have a certain types of audience based on certain interest areas, you should understand that what kinds of predicates they can use actually inside their queries or query terms, or what kinds of actually predicates they can use for their related and possible search activities. Once you are able to do that, you will start to realize that actually all these predicates that I write here in terms of actually being educated, like working, studying, mastering, investigating, learning, again, improving or increasing, all these predicates, they will be actually connected to each other with the specific type of, let's say, context and also the nouns. And to be able to explain it even further, actually, here we can talk about a little the possible nouns. For instance, when we talk about studying on X, working for X, mastering in X, or something related to the X, all these possible replacers, whenever they are connected to each other, they will be creating a contextual domain together as well. So even if nouns are different, as much as actually we are able to connect and use these predicates together, you will realize that certain types of query networks, they have different contextual connections. And when you are targeting these queries, you will need to connect them to the specific context as much as possible. If you realize that one of the contexts is so dominant for some of the query networks, you, instead of connection, you should actually continue to expand your topical map on that topic, which we explained in the previous example. So working on X, studying X, examining X, investigating X reasons, learning X types, improving X efficiency, and increasing X effects. X can exist for all these verbs. Furthermore, all the outcomes of the X and X-related verbs can be linked to some other related concepts and the verbs. Some of the connected verbs with different nouns and their phrasification versions are below. For instance, earning, deserving, making, having, collecting, gaining, acquiring, or securing. For example, when you actually work on something or study on something, you will realize that you will be earning or deserving or making or having something. So these are connected verbs, and also they reflect the site context, which means that in your topical map, you will need to include or involve all these nouns and their attributes and their values, which is the next topic for the next video. Entity, attribute, value. And for all these verbs, we can write some different nouns or nouns that are nearly same. For example, earn money, deserve raise, make money, have more money, collect money, gain money, acquire profit, secure the profit, deserve financial freedom, or deserve raise, and more. These two different verb groups have many common things in between them. In the Semantic SEO course, by the way, these things will be explained in the context of related and possible search activities and their connections to the real world activities. The real world activity section is actually the most important part of the search, but it's offline. So it requires a little bit mind reading from the information retrieval system point of view. If you think that the language algorithm BERT has been trained over 3.5 billion words and word connections, it is more and more possible. The BERT language algorithm works based on the word sequences, and it is trained with the masked language model, which requires masking 15% of the words inside these 3.5 billion words and then predicting them with the accuracy, and next sentence prediction and the next word predictions. These are also used as well. For example, if you change the previous predicate to function, the object will be with word sequences, like function with blah blah blah. These verbs and mutual context are central verbs. Yes, they are called really central verbs in NLP2 to understand the context. Verbs with centralized connections help in shaping the semantic content network based on the semantic search. So certain predicates have certain types of semantic context. Signifiers such as examine signals the reason, and increase signals the amount or intensity. Thus, the objects and their attributes are signaled by the predicate as in triples and entity attribute value models. The EAV models and SEO connection have been explained further in the choosing the right attributes with accurate values from text SEO case study, which is the next one. Especially for this specific project in this part, let me just go a little bit quicker. I already told you that I didn't publish a third semantic content network. So the reason was there was untrained authors, and I was able to rank the website already really high. And after that, the undisciplined behaviors of the authors, I didn't endure more, and I ended the contract. And right now the client actually wants to come back. And since the owner of the company is really a good person, probably I will accept. Despite I try to not accept that much actually the former clients. But this probably will be one of the exceptions. But basically, remember that the third content network that I didn't publish, it was supposed to connect previously two published content networks. Since we didn't connect them, there was a topical gap always. So this specific latest update effects, it was already actually expected. And here I say, when I published the case study even here, January 11 in 2020, directly in a scientific way, I tell that the planned third semantic content network can be processed as a conceptual grouper content network, because first two were explaining certain types of things and they are grouped together in another context with different predicates. But we didn't publish that. That's why I call it grouper. And if it is published with the effect of the second semantic content network, the overall organic traffic can be over 3 million sessions per month. So third one was the biggest one basically. And in this case here, again, I have left the project. I explain why I did it left. And even if it doesn't have a knowledge domain terms and contextual phrases implemented properly, it is configured with enough level of semantic connections and accuracy to allow for an overall organic search performance over the 3 million sessions per month if the third content network is published in the future, accounting for the increasing effect of the second semantic content network as well, which means that actually the second one will rank higher thanks to third one. Now, since it is not published, it will be a little bit hard to accomplish there. This case is directly relevant to how we build topical maps, create semantic content networks, and expand the topical maps for further topical authority to re-rank the sources in a proper way during the updates to change the ranking state in a proper way. So if you follow me for a while, you will realize that we are completing a puzzle here. You also understand that the course that I am publishing is not for just money, because if it will be just for money, I will be publishing it like 15 months ago. So if I just wait for 15 months while creating more case studies, writing all of them, explaining all of them, and helping people, because 25% of my time actually is spent on helping people just for free, just for goodness or good deeds. And I am happy for that, but you should understand that if you don't understand these connections between the case studies or how they complete each other, it will be hard for you inside the course or inside the community as well. But if you start to feel what I tell, if you start to understand actually these re-ranking events or how the predicates help for certain things, or what kinds of triples you should be using inside the topical maps slightly, it will be really good for your also future case studies, your own case studies in this case, I can tell. So verbs and connected semantic behaviors. For example, here we can of course tell that every human being is actually semantic creatures. From naturally, we actually connect things to each other with certain types of ways. That's why actually neural networks and deep learning are important, because whenever a search engine uses neural networks, they try to actually imitate our talents or our perceptions. Neural networks are actually a kind of imitation of our brains. When it comes to deep learning, it means that there are two different neurons that actually imitate each other or compete against each other, so that actually they can improve their performance together in a better way. And at the same time, if I just read this section, you will get actually my point a little bit better. The verb and noun connections like improve a skill, increase the profit, or earn money and learn a skill are connected to each other. Though the same semantic search patterns, you can generate 99 million different combinations of verbs and nouns that have the same meaning. My main point here is that if you put the word skill just after the improve, it will be eventually connected to profit, money, or financial well-being, or again it will be actually connected to learning a skill or doing something on certain types of ways, which is exactly the context network that we will need to actually stay on for creating a specific type of content network for a kind of education related website. If I read the example here, the word horse might make you remember a specific thing, but if you use the same concept in Spanish, the word might make you remember the Spanish teacher from your university. In this context, when 999 million people have searched for X with 999 million different backgrounds, a semantic search engine needs to understand it. Do they mean horse in Spanish, or horse speed, or horse anatomy, or something else? These semantic content networks cover every possibility of the word connections based on search engines' understanding, and all the words' contexts come from semantic search behaviors and their patterns. So basically, a semantic content network is created based on semantic search behaviors. It's the main difference there. And to be able to do that, you need to actually have a really good linguistic skills. So sculpting the context for deepening and sharpening it. We explained these two before, but how about the sculpting? Because when you use certain type of words inside your articles, you will realize that there is something that we call themes of the word. If I tell beach and Hawaii, this context will be actually holidays. If I just tell military base Hawaii, context will change again. If I just tell actually something else with another something else, the theme of the verse will start to create actually a kind of relevance calculation for certain types of indices or indexing shards inside the search engines serving methodologies. So earning money or improving the efficiency of a process are two vast contexts because you can put too many things here. There might be millions of queries or possible search intents and behaviors semantically for all these word sequences. Thus, for a semantic content network, a source context is a must. That's why in the previous case study, we actually explained this specific context. If you can just check it, you will get it better here. What is a source context? Basically, according to your source context, the search engine will be doing something like this. Here, let's say we have a query X, let's say, and this is your source, let's say source 1, and this is the source 2. And let's say this query has been connected to the context 1 in this case. And if your source context is closer to the context 1, for the context that can be connected to this query, you will be closer. They will be multiplying their source context to the topic. That's why site-wide grams are really important. Topical consolidation or having a primary focus is useful. If you have a specific query for car, and at the same time, if you are a topical authority for the concept of the car, let's say, they will be multiplying the car together with you, even if there is a slightly different context inside the query as well. So being closer to that specific thing with your source context, it will be helpful. But of course, the car example here, it is too broad, which is something that we use in terms of query breadth. So query breadth, we will be seeing it in these research papers, and it will be easier. But if I just search car engine, let's say X 1500 cc, etc. In this case, actually, if you mention the word cc in your titles, headings, and some other areas as an attribute of engines of the cars, this way, actually, if you are an authority for the topic, the distance between you and the query and this context will be easier to calculate. That's why the search engines were able to actually first prioritize sources for certain types of topics, and every broad index refresh after broad core algorithm updates, these prioritizations change one more time. So what is the purpose of the brand, or whom should be the brand reach out to its own content network? From these answers, the context might be sharpened and deepened. If the context is restaurants, make money from the best sauces, increase profit with the best customer relationships, learn new food trends in the US, deserve more positive food to service reviews from clients, or other types of verbs and noun chains can be used. If the context is students, make money online, make money while studying, learn new skills, improve your reading speed to study faster, or any other connected things can be found. But always learn and earn will be the main central predicates for creating all these semantically relevant content networks. Another important step here is canonicalization. Even if the context is deepened or shaped, still specific examples are still too vast and not query focused. Search engines always compare a query to a document, thus vocabulary coverage between a document and a query is a must. Because even if your topical consolidation actually is dense, even if the query is connected to you, some of the queries, they might have really good amount of variations. These variations will be clustered with certain types of canonical queries. And once we have this canonical query, all these variations, since they will be connected to the canonical query, in this case, actually, even if you have a kind of context match, if the query vocabulary is different than the document vocabulary, still the relevance will be lower. That's why focusing on predicates help one more time, thanks to lemmatization and stemming, or using the noun version of the specific or the same verb one more time. So query-focused semantic vocabulary configuration. I told many times that do not just focus on queries with high search ranking difficulty or keyword difficulty or high search demand. I even use zero search volume queries. And when I say zero search volume query, I mean really zero. I don't mean Ahrefs tells zero or SEMrush tells zero. I mean really zero impression phrases, unique phrases that even any kinds of AI won't be able to write there. You will need to create your own conceptual construction or your own conceptual ground for a topic so that actually you can be unique. The main purpose of topical authority is being the main central representative seed source for a topic so that other websites can rank if only they are similar to you. You should force other competitors to imitate you. If you are able to do that, then it means that actually they will be able to rank if they are just following and imitating you, which will be also making you a higher authority. The main reason that many people still they couldn't pass the websites that actually I rank is that they just imitate, but they don't really configure their vocabulary with the context, with the themes of the verse, or with the proper predicates or richness of the vocabulary. So before I even published a Python script actually for checking the vocabulary differences and how they can, these vocabulary differences actually can create a certain types of the context understanding difference. If you search for the proximity search, according to the proximity of the verse, actually, the context of the document will start to change. According to the proximity between the verse, the search engine can also index and cluster these things differently as well. But beyond proximity search, there are many other things that actually we can do as well. And as you remember, Google even had actually a search operator before, like around. Around 5 means that the first word and the second word should be closer to each other, or more than 5 words. So in this case, I believe I explained the background of these things, but query templates, again, they are here. That's something that you should be checking. And if I just read here to make it a little clear, the query-focused semantic vocabulary configuration is must create a proper query-focused context consolidation. The verbs can be synonyms based on their subjects. For instance, running a business and functioning in a workplace. The verbs run and function are not synonyms, but based on the context, they are highly similar or near synonyms. And thus, in the lexical relations and SEO case study, I have focused on these lexically important connections. A verb can be a noun, a synonym, or adjective, and adverb based on the word sequences. And not just the word, but word sense and word role should be matched with the query patterns. If the specific query term has used a specific type of word as an adjective, do it also in your document too. Do not write randomly. Also match the word roles, word themes, and also word senses. So my microphone doesn't stand actually fixed way. That's why it is a little bit confusing me, and that's why this video is a little hard to do. So that's why sometimes I stop while talking. Sorry for that. Probably in the worst scenario, I will stop the video and then I fix it. But for now, I will continue in this way. So the first classification comes from the verbs, and it creates semantically connected behaviors. And the second classification comes from the nouns, and it creates the connected outcomes. Learning a skill and improving a skill are connected to each other, even if they are not same. Making money from that skill or earning more by increasing the skill efficiency are connected to previous verb and noun connections. Based on these connections, many granular contexts can be acquired and processed better than other websites do. So an example of process for the connections of verbs for the creation of semantic content networks, we have a simple thing here to actually think. So if I just read this part, it will be useful, I believe. Entity-oriented search has been used as stated and processed based on that specific case study, as you remember. You can find it from YouTube channel or from my website or other places that I have written before. The source context here is the course selling. And most of the time, courses are bought by the young people who want to process and further their careers and lives. In this context, learning and occupation and earning money from it are representative and canonical verbs and nouns. From here, X course, tips to learn X, X books, podcasts, and X-related occupations, X occupation necessities, universities for X occupation, salaries in X occupation are processed. This type of source context requires becoming an authority for multiple different entities, but also search behaviors. For example, it is not good enough to be an authority for only X, but also for courses, tips, learning, comparison of occupation and career and salaries. Context should be processed across the entire websites. So this section is a little dangerous, because if you process some of these things, you will realize that you will also need to go for jobs, job seeking or career making in a way. If you go for job making, it's an area that actually not every website can rank and compete. That's why rather than finding a job context, you should be focusing on actually being better in a career or in industry. It will be very much easier, I can tell. One more thing is that you will need to create many other small content networks just for every X, learning writing faster. Then you will need to focus on also not just writing faster, but other adverbs. And from there, you will need to also connect these things with certain types of concepts, or learning reading faster. Then you will need to also focus on actually reading what. Then from there, you will need to connect these things to back. But there are many things that actually to understand when you should be stopping and when you should continue to connect further and further. If you read this lexical relations case study, it will be actually helping you a lot. And there are also something that I actually call entailment of the verbs. For example, understanding and grasping, they are not same thing. Or grasping the basics or the concepts, they are not exactly the same things in this case. So that's why some specific predicates, they have some smaller versions with more specificity, like walking is something, crawling is something, but in both versions, you just move. Moving by crawling, moving by walking, moving by running. So you can actually connect predicates to another predicate with certain types of or different kinds of entailment. You should also remember these while creating your content networks. And here, if you read this part, you will get why that third semantic content network was actually important. And the third semantic content network that hasn't been published yet is to provide better contextuality, be way more relevant, and drive more traffic for courses and definitional concepts. This definitional concept actually explains why you should be defining that also X as well by creating smaller networks. It is not good enough to process programming occupations, universities, and celerities, but also programming languages or programming glossary terms should be done. When a source contains all this information, it becomes a topical authority for three main things: education, career, and education and career specific concept definitions. If I just ask you something like this, let's say we have a query cluster here, and it is about is programming, let's say, career. So in this case, here we have programming, and here we have, let's say, programming languages. And here we will have actually, let's say, programming courses. And here we will have some another context like programming jobs and salaries. In this case, here we can also get the programming universities. And maybe in here we can also mention one more, like, let's say, the programming or even programmer lifestyle or something like that. So imagine that there are 6 different websites, and 6 of these websites are authority, at least one of these and different things. So in this case, if someone searches for that one, which another one would be the closest? If you are able to understand it by processing the query in a proper way, you will be able to create a proper semantic content network. So you imagine that there is a website. It is an expert, authority, and popular source for programming jobs and salaries or job finding. But another one is actually authority for courses, and the person maybe wants to create or start a career for that area. But in this case, the person will need to actually learn the programming languages, again will be connected to courses. And then maybe the person is a high school student, and the person will need to go to a university. And inside that university also, the course might help one more time. And the person will need to understand these two, and these will be connected to salaries one more time, unfortunately. And all these things will be connecting back to the programming one more time. But according to the language, Python or something, all these things will be changing in another level one more time. Whenever you repeat these semantic patterns, you will start to create a kind of network eventually. If you cover all, it's better. But while covering all of these, you will need to touch some slight differences, because as I say, you can't go for the job or job finding. It's too much work. So that's why you will need to find some sub-contexts and other query networks here to be able to rank by changing the query meaning, which is about query semantics. So what is the prominence of semantic role labels for query semantics? If you check my SlideShare account, the semantic role labels are processed there a lot. But semantic role labels, basically, they actually help search engines to process certain types of contexts by grouping entities, recognizing entities also in a better way too. They can label certain types of entities with certain types of labels. And then whenever a certain entity has been mentioned with that specific label or context, they group the documents and they understand that there is another context and profile for entity. And for that profile, they connect other queries. So entity, then we have a verb. The verb will be creating a semantic role label. That label will go back to the agent, which is entity. Then it will be connected to an attribute and to a context. Then the queries and documents will be clustered together for that specific connection. Yeah, I am looking at the microphone still. And in this case here, we actually have a specific pattern from Google, efficient index for low latency search of large graphs. Why do you think that they call it efficient index and for low latency? Let me explain. So let's say I just search for Tom Hanks. And after Tom Hanks, there are many predicates that we can use. We can even tell Tom Hanks runs, Tom Hanks buys, shops, blah, blah, blah. But the most important one actually is acting, I say, or acts, basically. Acting actually has many meanings, but since the person is an actor, it will have a career-related thing. And in this case, actually, here, the next section will create another context, like education, maybe. Or maybe it will be for actually just movies or something else. So whatever the labels here that we use, instead of checking entire index network, we will be checking a small version, a small section that matches here. It will provide low latency and it will be efficient for inside a large graph. And here we have these type of examples. Actor entity using the relationship has profession. This may represent one hop path, because you will have many paths as here. And there will be entities, attributes, and some other labels as in this area. When I say education, by the way, Tom Hanks actually can also give acting education too, or he might act in an education movie or educational movie. As you see, there are many connections there. And the entity, Tom Hanks using the story by relationship. By the way, this year, as I say, Google keys will be important, and all these things they are really obvious. Actually, it's not just patents. Believe me, it will be really huge. I hope if we are able to publish it with any problem legally. Anyway, and Tom Hanks is the subject of the triple, acted in, predicate, and low crown is the object, etc. So as I say, the predicates are creating the triples. And also all these triples create semantic role labels. All these semantic role labels actually create entity attribute value structure, which we'll be processing in the next video. SRL is important for query semantics because without keeping it is too academic and diverse. Let me just frame it. I explained it before too. As I say, there are patterns. And entity indexing or re-indexing the existing documents based on the entities involves SRL and predicates. A semantic search engine organizes its index and query processing methods based on the entity attribute value database structure. To differentiate different contexts and subtopics from each other, EAV requires predicates. In other words, to be able to index the entities and classify the different subcontexts of these entities, a search engine needs to understand the prominence of predicate in the sentence, and these triples should be organized based on the predicates. And to classify the group of verb documents for better index partitioning, which is explained by Googlers in the Search of the Record podcast in the serving section. And based on the entities, a search engine needs to classify the queries. If a search engine uses entity attribute value triples for index partitioning, it needs to understand the verbs in the query semantics. Let's dive into a couple of semantic role labeling samples I tell. And here you actually have a simple example like runs company in 1971. This is just a small semantic network that comes from a certain types of text. The attributes date, named entity y, and its attribute value pair, type company pair are connected to x with the run predicate. Imagine that this specific run predicate actually connects many other entities with the same attributes but different values many times in the form of a pattern. What would you do? Would you try to understand every sentence individually, or would you actually try to get some of the patterns there? If you just check actually here, generating query answers from Dear Bill Slavsky, it just explains this, generating query answers by providing facts from a database. And here we always have constraint different certain types of phrase patterns or entity relation patterns or conceptual constraints. We are using these things to actually for using smaller search graphs, so that actually latency can be smaller, cost can be smaller, and we can understand things faster. So even if your source understands this, even if you write everything way much best way compared to your competitors, if you are costlier, if you are harder to understand, it won't be really good for you. That's why that's why they use templates and no fluff at all. Do not try to be reinvent the wheel. Basically, you don't have to write in an artistic, really different way. Just give the fact and move on, as much as possible at least. For reviewable entities, it might be a little different. So in this case, actually, I explained this part, and I will need to put a video here. It was not for me, but I believe I already mentioned. So an example of the verb connections in neurons. For instance, if you look at here, which we'll be processing in that research paper section, because here we actually see mid-query refinements. Basically, query ends here. And then these are the mid-query refinements. Testosterone brings dopamine, and also it brings together with deep sleep. And we also have endorphins and feminine energy and testosterone naturally and body temperature or these type of things. But then we get followers on Instagram. So most of these things are actually about health, but not just health. They're about also masculinity. They're also about happiness, and which is also connected to sleep. But they are all coming from increase. If I do it decrease, which is antonym, now we actually have some other context like PDF size, which is connected to JPG size. It doesn't bring the most search things, by the way. They assume that if this is search, this will be relevant too, and they replace it. But then we also, and again, get the health rate things, as you see, and video size actually follow it, and again, the melanin or melatonin, etc. But when it comes to melt, it goes to, again, another context. Predicates have certain types of context. When it comes to freeze, we see certain types of things one more time, and usually it follows that structure. These are some of the semantic role labels. We always have an agent, which is the thing that actually does that. Experiencer, the thing that is affected. Goal is the purpose. Source, origin of the object of a transfer event or instrument is the tool that you are using. And there are examples here. John has a headache, which means that actually the experiencer of an event is the John. And the specific thing here, actually, it is written in an italic way so that you can actually understand what the result is, content is. In this way, search engines actually are able to extract more information. Mary loaded a truck with hay at the depot on Friday. For example, here the load 0.1 actually express the meaning of the load from the FrameNet, because in FrameNet the load predicate will have many different meanings. First, we understand which meaning of the load has been used. From that patterns, as I show in this part, the search engine gets all the connection, then they understand which indexing chart they should be using, and that indexing chart has been connected to a topic, and all the sources for that topic, they are already prioritized for certain contexts. Then the best one ranks first. This is a topical authority, basically. So what are the themes of the verse? This is actually a website already that explains the concept, but let's say if I click to the dentist, you will realize that only certain types of words appear there. And that's why actually an example here, the word barnacle, boardwalk, boat, crab, caterman, clam, dock, dune, ocean, limpet, dive, swim, hat, and other types of words are from the same theme. But if we add another word here, such as Wall Street, imagine that I just write in an article, dune, ocean, limpet, dive, swim, hat, then the Wall Street appears there. Search engines are like blind librarians. They don't get nothing. They get nothing. They just check what appears together with what. And then actually they just use possibility of word sequences to understand what should be coming next based on what. Understanding is something only for humans. Unfortunately, not for the machines. Even if we have better machines that can do things compared to us, still they won't be understanding, or they won't have the ability to grasping something. They just will imitate things based on math. If I just add the Wall Street here, the team has to change suddenly, and understanding the verbs of the life is important to understand how to consolidate these context terms and vectors, because all these thematic words come strongly from the verb connections. Nouns have to be affected by the verbs based on the purpose and the cause-result relationship, and these help in creating semantic search patterns for possible search activities. So here we should also mention something. If you want to do some exercises, try to mention these words together with Wall Street for a certain types of query, for instance, or write all these words to somewhere, guess the context, then try to create a document there. This is actually what we call as Cranfield style. This is one of the first experiments for information retrieval. Basically, Cranfield actually he gives people aerospace documents. Then he tells people that write some queries, then rank these documents according to your understanding. He gets how people rank things, creates a model, and he realizes that it works. He doesn't know why it works, but it works. So basically, imagine that I give you 500 documents for electric cars. Then I tell you that write your own search queries. Then rank these things according to relevance, according to yourself. And once enough level of people do the same, the overlapping aggregating information actually create a better ranking model. We don't know why it works, but that's why it is called Cranfield style. Basically, we don't know why it works, but it works. So this is also why I tell an algorithm doesn't have to make sense. If it works, it works. Okay, so understanding the FrameNet for semantic search. Let me read these parts. If I tell cook, for instance, a heat source, heating tool, food recipe, calorie ingredient, or these type of things will need to be there. If I use the word run, let's say it requires more context because for all these subcontexts, a company, a destination, or any kinds of methodology or something should be mentioned further. When if I tell move, moving an object, or moving tool, or moving a destination, these type of further context will be needed there. If a topic is about losing weight, using the word dietitian might be better than a doctor. If a word has 5 different possible themes, using the most specified and narrow term first would be better to specify the context. If a verb contains a specified frame pattern, giving the steps or stages, parts, types, these patterns from this first sentence will be even way much better. If a document is not organized based on semantic search patterns, the document and document network should be optimized and reorganized based on semantic search principles. Here I use an LTK, and for example, when I check this specific frame for criminal process, say, and if I just tell this specific algorithm, let's say, to give me this specific frame with all the, let's say, specific verbs inside that, here we tell this specific section like authorities, charges, participants, etc. And these are connected to each other as, let's say, parent frame is intentionally affecting something, and it is connected to arrest, and it is part of criminal process. Entire web already has been actually perceived based on these connections. So differentiation of lexical units for better verb and noun themes. For example, the verb bake, bakes, baked, and baking, lemmas, might mean applying heat, cooking, or absorbing the heat. Different nouns can use the same verb and its same version as below. The potatoes have to be baked for more than X minutes. The aubergine has to be baked for more than Y minutes. The, let's say, courgette has to be baked for more than Z minutes. So in this case, this specific answer pattern actually has been connected in the same way, but still actually, according to the specific predicate format or lemma, the sentence structure and the connections will actually change, because here we don't know who does it. But here we have the chef, for instance, and the specific predicate, again, it changes its structure overall. Because according to chef, but maybe according to nationality of the chef, the cuisine might change, and according to that, X minutes can be something else one more time. A semantic content network, let's say, and semantic network can be created based on these connections, and if we use the bake verb for the meaning of applying heat, the sentence structure will change and it will need to catch the query perspective. At the same time, semantic role labels also should be coming from queries one more time. So here now I am giving these case study examples, and actually it will be better I do this in the first part. And here some of these case studies or these websites have been seen before, but I didn't explain the predicates, these specific parts before. So let me explain just the predicates. We have processed lexical relations. We have processed also how to expand these topical maps, but right now we will just focus on actually the predicates. So these 27 articles once, you know that which website it takes traffic from headline with just 27 articles. I didn't, as you see, implement a big topical map there. A small topical map was able to actually increase the traffic 10 times by taking traffic from the headline, WebMD, etc. So there actually I conceptualized the concepts of depth, vastness, sometimes I call it momentum, and also let's say, if I just skip the credit thresholds for now for keeping the video shorter, but if you cover something really deep, you don't need to cover things in a vast way. In other words, instead of including 50 topics, you can go for 10, but this time every 10 topics should be processed in a really, really good way so that you can rank. Or you will go faster, and also you will need to go wider so that you can again rank. So according to your author profile, you can use different methodologies here. So in the course probably I will be explaining this website, and these are the updated graphics, by the way. Still it ranks, as you see. I guess it will be decreasing because website is still so passive, but if there is no alternate documents that have been created for this website, it can continue to rank at the same time. And the predicates that I have used here, the X is the product, that's why I am hiding it. But consuming X, using X are connected with different layers of the same contextual domains, such as consuming X in the morning, consuming hot X, consuming hot, sorry for repeating it, consuming hot X with also something else, let's say consuming X before Y. And all these context qualifiers are connected to certain query templates. The verb consume is connected to other entailing predicates such as use, prepare, or understand. The entailed predicates are way more specific, thus giving them would expose the project's industry. So that's why I'm not able to give them here. Let me drink a little water. Since I have a schedule for the course launch, I'm recording these videos in the same day nearly. And this is the holiday season, you all party already, so let me just be a little quick, or sometimes let's say a little distracted. So here we have the Sunny Valley. I explained this website also inside this specific case study for the SaaS SEO project, let's say. And in this one too, here we actually talk about a few things. Let's say the predicates that I use here: provide network security, learn network security, compare network security technologies, buy network security service, use network security program, have network privacy, prevent network hack, understand network security threats, strengthen the company network security, use network security principles, leverage network security, grasp network security types, secure the network, breaching data center, and more. Listen here carefully. All these predicates are united with different phrase taxonomies such as network security program, technology, hack, threats, types, services. All the phrase taxonomies make the query networks and conditions or the connections more explicit and narrowed with certain context vectors. Phrase taxonomies are processed in the semantic SEO course further. And these phrase taxonomies, they're actually about entity attribute value, because predicate will be bringing the noun will be connected to the entity and the concept and the attributes and the values, and that noun will be bringing another noun, that noun also will be bringing another predicate, and when you connect them you will be getting the context and the query networks as well. Nasdaq SEO case study. I have explained from Nasdaq we process this specific project. B2B SEO has been explained here. You should watch this video to get it further. And in this specific one, the 3D printing and plastic injection molding or some other things were the main topics. Print 3D X, print prototype C, mold B, or cutting V, laser W material with BP machine. using R technology for W type of 3D printing, providing 3D printing service, understanding heavy metallurgy, comparing X material to Y material, no C material, no P inventor, compare C machine to P machine, configure X machine for P cutting, learn T cutting for P material with Z machine. The predicates here provide context signifiers such as for, with, and via, together with the phrase taxonomies. The context signifiers, like these functional verbs, they will be explained in my book later. The context signifiers are processed further in the information responsiveness book that I will be publishing. When it comes to EB5 bricks here, again, the predicates that actually we are using, they are around investment, citizenship, and visa. And connection at the same time here I tell, let's say these predicates are going somewhere, traveling, settling down, investing in, immigrating, applying, collecting, providing, moving, flying, transit, tour, trip, voyaging, touring, running, or founding, or registering, or approving, learning, and managing, and parenting. So parenting has been connected to the, again, EB5 because you will need to actually immigrate, and people also involve their families. When it comes to running, it is for business. Founding is for company. Registering is for brand. You should get the closest noun for the predicate. And all these things are conditionally, they are synonyms of each other. Learning, culture there, laws there, food there, managing. You can manage business. You can also manage your family during this process. And it will be connected to parenting again. So parenting in a different country in the context of learning culture is also something else again. And you will need to distribute all these things. That's why I'm telling that. There is not that much SOP here. I will be creating the SOP inside my Core's framework inside the course, but you will need to, while you are following that, tools won't give you these things because none of the SEO methods or strategies, they are not structured according to these deep advanced SEO. So that's why you will need to use your brain here. And this one, acquiring actually 1,200,000 organic clicks. It was actually 1 million in the previous video. It continues to increase. I launched this thing in my, I shared this thing inside my Twitter account. It's here, then it became like this. Probably I will need to share it one more time. And right now it is actually like this. It's around 1,200,000. So let me explain what kinds of structure has been used here too. This one has been created by actually, let's say, client, the people that I train. I'm really happy that they were able to do that because when I say it was so happy that actually I felt that finally I can change the foundations and traditions there, and I was able to transfer all these brain reflexes to someone else. And the owner of the company here, actually, once he came to the Turkey to visit me, we were talking about something, let's say Volvo cars. And I told the person that, do you like the sedan cars? And the person actually also told me that I don't like SUV. So I didn't ask for that, for instance. This is actually what we call inquisitive semantics. You give a declaration, then you create the question in the next sentence. If you're able to create the correct next question, you will be able to answer it. And that answer will be connected to the first declaration. If you unite these two sentences with certain predicates, nouns, attributes, values, it means that you are on a specific context. If it matches the queries and query flows, which means that actually your relevance will be increasing. That's why AI can't compete with this, because AI, they don't get actually these inquisitive semantics or these type of context flows as it should be. But you can use AI as a tool for manipulating or redirecting these connections. When it comes to the project here, actually, I won't be able to give the industry or the name for now to protect them, even if it is not needed that much actually. But still here, to change, in the name of the changing the culture of SEO, the predicates here that are used a little like learning X type of things and comparing X type of things, understanding X type of things, and all these things are connected to certain types of nouns. All these nouns involve feelings sometimes, or life expectations, or sometimes they also involve dreams or calendar dates or any kinds of numeric values there, and all these things will be connected to some other things one more time. So it is used in that way too. Right now here, let's move on to this section, and I will try to be quick to mention all these things and process these things, because here, once we are able to process all these parts, you will realize that how we can actually parse queries in a proper way. And I will be quick. I will be just giving the main idea. It won't take that much time, don't worry, but you should actually read these things later by yourself. So as you already know, I actually published my expectations from 2023 in terms of SEO, and this specific Twitter tweet thread, I just opened that. It like, maybe I can here. Yeah. So in this one, I actually talk about natural language generation, and I tell you to actually focus on microsemantics. I guess you understand that main idea of microsemantics, but the first research and the patent or invention that I want to show you here is that it focuses on the natural language generation outputs. Google already has many language models that are way much better than GPT-3, 4, whatever, or Bloom of the Hugging Face, etc. So they also actually know what kinds of a natural language should be generated based on what kinds of a query. They are already prepared for your queries or your search queries. They already know what kinds of an answer can be actually generated there for what purposes. And this specific one, they actually explain what kinds of models can be created for human behaviors, and then they actually connect certain types of sentence structures and sentence outputs to the certain types of queries. That's why if you're able to read some of these specific documents, it will be really useful for you to understand the concepts here. And as you see here, they talk about bird score as well, and there are some other types of metrics to use. So these natural language generation, it might be also dangerous for especially informative websites in the future. But still, for giving a source will always be one of the necessities, because people always need to actually read the same thing from multiple sources. As you know, still in this age even, we still discuss for shape of earth. So someone will find a way to skeptic of any kinds of answer, and they will go for it. And when it comes to this specific query related invention, let's go top. So here we try to understand the interest areas of people, and according to the interest area of the people, we try to actually suggest them different queries or different types of documents as well. And in this part, if you read here, the interest rate related things or user interest model, let's say, it's not that much about queries, I can tell, because it is about queryless search. But if you're able to generate queries from documents, as I say in the Cranfield experiments, imagine that you have documents and I tell you that create me the best queries that this document will rank at the top. If you're able to generate queries for documents, you can actually reverse the information retrieval. Rather than getting the query first and the document, you can actually get first interest area of the person or interests of the person. Then you can get the documents for these interests. Then you can create queries from these documents. And the most possible query that should be searched from that specific user actually will bring the most relevant document to the top. It will be a kind of reverse information retrieval, but it is working at the moment in a really good way. And this is about actually that. By the way, this is actually a little bit Turkish last name. I can check it later too. User interest sensitive condensation. So I will suggest you to check these things, this section a little bit further too. And I talk about topics here and interests. So subtopic update is something that actually came from Google. As you know, the vice president of the search and also paid search too, I can remember, Prabhakar Rakavan, previous vice search for paid. Yes, as much as I can remember. Here they talk about the subtopic updates. Basically, according to your specific search query, they're able to actually connect different topics to that query, and then they prioritize topics and they prioritize actually sources for these topics. So that's why information foraging or search engine result page construction with different types of features and contexts are needed. And whenever you get it, you will be able to actually generate queries. If you're able to generate queries and the connections between the query terms with different word compositionalities or semantic row labels, triples, and entity attribute values, you can create the best semantic content networks for overall rankings. When it comes to the here too, Topics API, it's also used for privacy protection of the users. Last year, at the beginning of the last year, it was an alternate for Flock. And here they try to get your interests based on topics. That's why actually I talk about natural language generation here. They're able to generate text based on your queries. Then they're able to understand your interest areas and topics for interest areas. And then also they're able to connect queries to the interest areas, queries to the topics, and again, sources to topics. And again, also queries to the topics to interest areas, and it is again connected to documents. So all these connection flows, they are created for different types of searches or search purposes, and they all actually, let's say, work in a good way. You can also check these too. It will be helpful for you to understand some ads related obstacles that they have. And these are important things, by the way, because Google, or from Google's point of view, ads are everything. They will do anything like that revenue there. So when it comes to this one, this is actually about canonicalizing search queries to natural language questions. So this is about actually connecting certain types of queries to the certain types of questions. So again, it's about actually format of the questions or format of the queries, and they try to understand which queries are well formed and which queries are not formed enough, and they try to get the implicit and also explicit questions here. If you just read some of the examples here, you will get actually the perspective of the search engine to rank certain types of things. Just search something, then ask yourself why it ranks at the top, and try to focus on the query as much as possible. The well-formed variant, how to reset hypothetical router, let's say, can then be associated in a database as a related query for hypothetical router configuration, and can optionally supplant any related query association between reset hypothetical router and hypothetical router configuration. See, as I say in the case studies, and I did in the case studies, is directly coming from these research papers. Why shall I listen to Google spokespersons while Google inventors write everything here, like engrams or feature extraction or any kinds of things? Anyway, let's move on. As you see, already some important parts are finished here. So language processing or natural language processing of query answers. So here we focused on actually connecting queries to the questions, and here we focus on actually focusing on NLP for the answers of these queries. And here there are many examples. Keep these citations, diagrams, and also show these parts too. But basically, these specific sections, these are explaining the structure, but they are not good enough, and there are too many diagrams. Well done in. Okay, anyway, if you want to, by the way, see these things a lot, you can read patterns. Most of them start in pretty standard way. But specifically here, actually, if you're able to check these specific parts, again, the question and answer pairing is related here because the query has been connected to the question, answer has been connected to the question, and NLP works with sentences, not with implicit phrases as much as possible. It will be costlier. It will also make you understand actually what kinds of sentence structures will be cheaper and easier for them to get, and how you can actually use these specific sections. And also this Markov model, it's something important to get. It tries to understand the Markov chains of users that between the semantic search behaviors. It tries to understand how the user behaviors are actually connected to each other. Even Prabhakar Raghavan, as I mentioned in his blog post, while they are focusing on subtopics and interest rates, Prabhakar Raghavan also had a kinds of research like, are search engine users Markovian? Something like that. I'm glad that some people. Here, Prabhakar Raghavan. Are web users real? Markovian. This is a good research. You can check. He was working on, he was on PPC part before, but I guess Prabhakar, he was always related to the organic search possible. So in this case, if you just read some of the examples here, it will be helpful for you to get. And 75 of patterns. It's actually rare, but this pattern here it has too much too much things for a single inventor. I will check this inventor a little bit further, to be honest, but usually this level of crowded citations, level of design thing, they are coming from 7 inventor like patterns, not one, not single. Sorry. Here, scoring candidate answer passages. The most important ones here are actually Stephen De Baker, works for Apple for Apple Search, and Srinivasan Venkatari, friend of Stephen. There are many other good and important people here, but I can tell that when it comes to Chinese names, I usually confuse them. And this, I don't know how to pronounce. Why it's hard for me. Massimiliano, Claramita, etc. I have seen him a lot in the as well. But basically, this is about actually scoring candidate answer passages. It's about featured snippets and information extraction and also passage indexing as well. If I ask a question like how far away is the moon, and if there are multiple answers inside the specific document, we try to get actually which one is the more relevant and important. In my information responsiveness book, I explain these things a lot, so you will see it. But try to get the flow of these patterns. They have an order, okay? Now actually we used NLP for query answers, and here now we dive in individual passages for actually scoring them. In this specific one here, generating elements of answer seeking queries and elements of answers. So let me explain in this way. Let's say we try to see the vocabulary or mutual vocabulary between questions and answers, queries and answer terms. That's it. And again, here we focus on answers and the queries at the same time. Answer seeking queries means that actually the question is a Boolean question or a really well-formed explicit question. And usually they are searching for a specific numeric value or a specific location name, like single word answers. They seek for trivia questions. They are not like long form questions. If you check some of these things, it will be useful for you again. And these scoring methodologies or context related scoring methodologies, they are also important too. For example, the Statue of Liberty can be associated with aliases. Statue of Liberty, Lady Liberty, aliases and need to be unique among entities. For example, Jaguar can be an alias, both an animal and a car manufacturer. So in other words, even if vocabulary is same or really similar, context still might be different. This is actually called orthogonal. There was an NLP concept like orthogonal or orthogon. Basically tries to tell that even if the words are same, context are sometimes it also be more complicated, like hotel and motel. They are from same context but different things, and since they are different things, context changes in deep level. That's why sometimes they are synonyms, sometimes they are not synonyms at all. Okay, the ranking resources based on categorical quality. Most important name here is Tristan G. Abstel. Basically, this invention here tells that if certain types of sources rank for certain types of queries a lot, they have a categorical quality. And this is where the topical coverage idea actually comes. An example of informational queries here, they give many things like football, space travel, etc. And this is a kind of convention for Google, giving using this type of parentheses for the queries. A navigation query, on the other hand, is a query for which there is a typically single website or resources for corresponding search results. And Tristan has a really good research just for finding the homepage of a resource, right? Because homepage doesn't mean that your actual domain, root domain address. You can have functional different homepages that even you didn't realize. Automatic classification on search engine quality. This is interesting. I know Microsoft, but here Microsoft actually, so let me tell you in this way. The Microsoft tries to create a search engine that gets all the answers from all search engines and rank these answers according to their relevance and quality. So I can tell that this might be one of the future things. Imagine that there is a chatbot or ChatGPT like system, and it gets all the answers from all the resources, then it ranks best of the best. So this is a kind of intertwined search engine or hyper search engine like thing. So you can tell me why it is here. It's here because it actually explains again these query and answer relevance scores, and also the answer quality score understanding at the same time. So if you're able to take some of these sections, it will be helpful for you to have a little bit further empathy with, let's say, the search engines, to understand the CTRs or other types of things like the recency of the pages. And some of these things are well known already, but some of these things and the calculations are unique. Let me drink a little bit further water. So this one, the recent interest-based relevance scoring. This is similar to this. So system and methods for determining the user interest. And here we have Daniel H. Green and Stephen Reisler, let's say. And it's actually different. But if I come to here, recent interest-based, let's say the relevance scoring, in this part too, they focus on the same thing, but these specific two patterns, they're actually similar to each other in terms of especially the context. And if you read here or read this thing again one more time, you can understand how important for them to understanding the slight differences inside the context, because according to the methodology that you use for NLP, the classified documents will have further and further and deeper contextual differences. It's easy to tell that actually this is a finance related movie, but telling something else there, like this is a Tom Hanks finance movie. This is a Tom Hanks finance movie from 2010. This is a finance movie from 2010 from Tom Hanks with, let's say, humor and also drama. It's also another thing to tell that actually this is an expert level or beginner level finance movie, or this is a critical finance movie. So the context always actually is something that we can always expand further and further, as in Google or Plex. And here actually they understand, or they try to give these type of connections a little bit further, I can tell. And the upper part actually gives for basic explanations, but these bottom parts, it might be more useful for you for seeing some certain examples, at least with these type of percentages. If I just read one of them, for example, if a result receives a click-through rate of the 10% among the general population and click-through rate of the 12% among search requesters having a particular interest, the relative difference is 20%. The threshold may also be statistical. This is also something that I explained actually already in my How Does Google Rank search case study here. I told before that too, they don't use direct CTR. That's why actually when they tell that we don't use CTR, they don't lie. They use different types of CTRs, different types of formulas. If my interest area is SEO, when I click something relevant to SEO, that click means something. But if someone with football interest, if they search something about SEO on the first time their lives, that click doesn't mean something. So they get the clicks from the people that actually have that specific interest area. So that's why understanding the interests is important for also clustering users and also measuring user behaviors according to their interest areas. So every user is not equal, get the click satisfaction. Search query is improved based on query semantic information. So here actually they rewrite the queries. Query rewriting is an art and is start point of the search engine optimization and also search engine construction. And here the process goes like determine alternate terms for terms in the initial search query, generate query context for initial search query. And when I say query context, remember here, as I say, there are context 1, context 2, context 3 inside the queries. Build semantic concept vector based on query context. Intersect semantic concept vector with the candidate alternative terms to find the valid alternative terms. Does it resonate something? From this case study, we get verbs, get nouns. Nouns are connected, and verbs again. And here too, same thing, add valid alternate terms, search query. If you have all of these, you will have a higher categorical quality. And also you have a better, let's say, click satisfaction possible for any kinds of model that you use. And you will be getting all the interest areas. As I say one more time, let's say I'm interested in computers. but your document is about quantum computers. So that's why they need to go further, because if the interest area of me and the document that I click are different, my click doesn't mean that much. But if I also show consistent queries for quantum computers, and if I click to you a few times and if I repeated that clicks on the SERP for other phrase taxonomies, is a clear signal for user satisfaction and correct relevance understanding. Dynamic query suggestion. So you can tell me that how it can be dynamic. Did you see something like you searched for this? Maybe you mean this with this query. You mean this section basically. It's dynamic. It comes from your previous query, which means that it's not static. Based on you, it changes. And here we have first query prefix note. Let's say we have FE, and let's say FE means global. FE might be a car lover or music lover. At the same time, we give scores. Then here, if you press F, then A or E or A, the connections actually change even further. And if you go for further other things, Black Eyed Peas is also connected there because Fergie is there. If you search for something else, again, another context will be there. If you go for Ferrari, Lamborghini also there, or Enzo Ferrari will be there one more time. And we'll be getting all these specific connections. It's also dynamic because it happens on live while you are typing. And according to your previous search query, all these dynamic context connections will change. If you have a certain long search sessions, you will realize that even the auto suggestions change based on your previous behaviors. If you are able to imitate these things, you can actually create better topical maps. So that's why it's not just about getting queries from tools. You need to do it. You need to manipulate the search engine so that they can give you further info. Associating an entity with a search query. This is one of the top ones that I love. I showed it one more time before. Basically, we have a query. Then we have an entity in the query, or we don't have an entity in the query, but we try to annotate it into a query. And query and entity association database keeps all the entities and associated queries. And then we also need to have the attribute for these specific associations. Get these proper way. Then we started to understand which part of the indices we should be using, with what types of triples, nouns, adjectives, or semantic role labels, etc. And this section here actually explains it too. When we search for Washington, many entities are directly counted here. And according to the next word that we use, it changes. It comes to this one here, using geographic data to identify correlated geographic synonyms. But again, Stephen D. Baker and Tristan G. Apsley are here. Two of them, both of them are really, really important. And here we try to see that actually whether the synonyms are changing based on geographies, because on certain geographies, the locality names or locality abbreviations, they might change their meaning further and further. That's why we try to understand. Let me just read here actually. Compare the two geographic locations and or areas against a set of criteria to determine whether the possible synonym is a correlated geographic synonym or not. So a certain type of term might be searched in a country or a region for a meaning, and in another region it might change its meaning one more time. So I am showing this thing to you because you will need to use these type of connections way much more in your semantic content networks, not just for localities, for many other things. In certain contexts, certain types of words, they change their meaning, and you can actually dilute the ranking signals while using these things. I have seen some examples for that, like the word dope. The word dope might be a brand or it might be an adjective, and the search engine might not get it whether you have used it as an adjective or it was a brand at the same time. So whether they are synonyms or something like that. So according to the word position, it will change. But if you just read these short pattern long, you will actually see some of the live examples from them as well, like GM, for instance, GM used car prices, or General Motors, or it might be General Manager or some other things, and you can get these things as well. Don't worry, we are coming to end. So identifying the common co-occurring elements in lists. So this is not directly about actually the queries, But imagine that HTML lists, they actually have really good amount of information. Here we again see Tristan Upsell and Stephen De Baker. And in this case, they try to get the synonyms and also connected entities attributes based on the listicles or list items and HTML lists. So if you just try to read this specific section, it will be really good for you. And you can also see these things like frequently alterable, frequently much in common, frequently altered, and high altering ratio. These information are also important for actually product review systems and updates, because in any kinds of product reviews, we actually list different types of products and compare them to each other. And there are some new SERP features lately that we see that tells this product has been listed by XYZ in their product reviews, etc. Basically, they actually can get also how many times that specific product actually has been altered, how much is common, based on what kinds of information, and all these sections there, they might be really useful for actually get the specific connections. And there are list item examples here. Actually, I remember Jupyter, or that maybe wasn't continuation, because there they were talking about space related things. Still, you can actually. So efficient query rewriting, maybe Paul A. Taker and is important, but MS Single is more important here. I will suggest you to check it too. Let me drink water because I am talking for a really long time. I have told this before. Mapping past search queries to rewritten queries. Caching the mapping in a cache memory, receiving in a search query, obtaining a rewritten query of the new search query from the cache mapping, issuing a search of the rewritten query in a place of the new search query to obtain search results of the later. Search engines, they don't always have to tell you that. Did you mean this? Sometimes they can actually directly actually give you the answers for your rewritten query. Basically, results, search engine results that you are getting for a query, they might not be the same with the query that has been seen in the search bar. And here we see the Krishna Bharat or Sergey Brin types of citations. You can also cited documents as well, or mentioned previous inventions as well. It will be useful. So when it comes to this one, actually is about query image search. Basically, everything is not about textual search here, and usually the query image search works with the landing page relevances or page rank of the landing pages and objects on the images. There is one more method, which is textualization or verbalization of the image, or let's say if the verbalized version of the image works with high level of quality, it means that it is actually relevant for them. You can also check this specific thing. As you see, they are labeling specific images. I come to this specific one is about query augmentation, which explains how the queries actually can change their meaning and augment the context further. The query might be really specific and narrow, but if the context has been connected to other things, and if this specific narrow context doesn't have enough search demand, they can augment it even further. Here you see Krishna Bharat one more time, and I will suggest to check this specific document as well. It will be helpful for you to actually see how it changes. And in this part here, we talk about actually a little bit synthetic queries or query generation using structural similarity between the documents. If you have really similar documents like this is actually a good example here. If you have an entity, then if you have a word like books, then even if there is no query for HL Mencken books, we can generate it, because we see that all these patterns appear in the titles in the seed sources. So we assume that if someone search for XYZ books, we assume that it will also the P books will be searched too. Then we generate these query without waiting further. That's why creating these patterns and making search engines to generate patterns is important. And here actually we have these sections. See, template evaluation model, template validation rules, template evaluation rules. So once you have a template, and once that template has been recognized by the search engine, they will be getting your document's purposes, context in a way much better too. That's why doing something in a consistent way as much as possible is important. Implicit question query in identification. Here we have an implicit or incomplete phrase. and the phrase actually has been connected to a question, but it doesn't appear clearly. So that's why we try to understand whether it is a question or not. And if it is a question, we generate a question, then we actually connect this question to an answer. You already mentioned these things in these parts. All these patterns actually complete each other. They are not like puzzle. They are actually following a linear structure as much as possible, because we talk about some of these things already, as I mentioned before. Let me come here. So I will need to be quick. Don't worry. I believe in 5 sections. And system and method for providing search query refinements. So search query refinement actually basically, according to your inputs to the specific sections, we get different types of candidates for refining the queries. If you're able to read these sections, you will understand the concept of the semantic distance and how this specific type of queries can be connected to what kinds of other queries. And you can understand when you should be opening a new page and when you should be focusing these things on the same page. And how these things are actually sorted, it will be helpful for you too. User context-based search engine. This is coming from David C. Tyler, I mentioned before, and these universe represents web. These domains represent contextual domains. If your query is actually from domain 1, and if you want to go for domain 6, you will need to touch domain 11, 9, 7, and then you will be going here. Basically, and here we try to understand the context of the user based on device location and many other things that actually can change the meaning of the search session. Multi-stage query processing system and method. I remember actually the Palhar is here, Ami Signal is here, and also Olcan Serginoli is here. These are important names. At the same time, this is one of the actually primitive patterns, to be honest. But if you read these parts, you can realize sometimes that actually they rank old documents higher. Sometimes they rank fresher documents. And sometimes they focus on certain types of trends. And this section is important too. Doc ID. Every document has a certain type of ID. Even if the URL changes, ID stays same. But URL ID changes. And doc ID, you will see these also inside Google keys in the future. And when it comes to these specific part, generating content snippets using token-based repository, you can realize that these two are really similar to each other because the inventors are nearly same. And at the same time, this is a continuation patent. If you compare these to each other, you can understand how they actually expand their patterns. If they expand it, it means that they are using it. Is multi-stage query processing, and every step for that, it will be explaining actually what they do first. For example, character recognition, and the word recognition, word boundaries, and then construction of the concepts. Then also, let's say, augmenting the query, further sections are coming, and reading these things. I say getting, or I can, if I read it, tokenization here means that tokens mean that words in the a token can be any object typically found in a document, including but not limited to terms, phrases, punctuation, HTML text, and the like. After parsing, a set of documents is presented as a sequence of the tokens. Furthermore, each token is the sequence of tokens, has a token position, which also represents the token in the set of documents. Which means word order matters, even if the meaning doesn't. Or there are other things that you can extract from. Methods and systems for adjusting a scoring measure based on the query breadth. I mentioned query breadth here before. Basically, especially single word queries, they are pretty complicated. And here they try to balance scoring methodologies based on the query breadth. If the query is too broad, it will be a little harder to deviate the popularity measure for the result. In the beginning part, the traffic was really important for Google, and they were ranking the popular sources way much more. So if the query breadth is high, certain types of ranking boosting scores, they will need to be deviated. Search infrastructure, I kept it here because it's again about a little bit query parsing and processing, and according to the query that has been used, the specific search infrastructure, which means actually serving interface, it will be changing. So it is one of the first samples that you can use. But this is actually from a different assignee. But still, according to the query, you can see how a social search engine can change these things even further. So if you continue from the Google, determining a composite score for categorized search results. So this composite score means that actually there are multiple other scores, and they are actually trying to get a specific type of score. Then at the same time, categorized search results in this part, it means that actually for a specific type of query, different results from different categories can be brought. And the composite score actually is not given only to a single source. It is given actually for all of them at the same time. And the highest score means that actually they will need to change the set of documents, not just a single document there. And it's also about a little bit these labels, or if I read some of the sections, say web content, however, is not organized in a structured manner, such as by providing labels, clusters, or categories that map web content by shared the property or the meta character. Search engines have evolved to help the users find and retrieve relevant web document as well as news, messages, and type. Existing methods used by search engines are based on matching search query terms indexed by the web pages. More advanced methods determine the importance of retrieved web content using, for example, a hyperlink structure-based analysis such as described in Sergey Brin and Larry Page, The Anatomy of the Large-Scale Hypertextual Search Engine in the US, blah, blah, blah. Despite improvements in the web content searching, not all web content is accurately retrievable. For instance, some types of web content are esoteric and may be referenced so infrequently that relatively few hyperlinks are available for a search engine to identify and exploit. Similar other types of web content such as advertisements are short-lived and can change frequently, often making retrieval a matter of timing rather than based on quality of match. Still, other types of web content, especially advertisements, are highly repetitive and duplicate a significant amount of content between individual web pages. One approach to searching poorly retrievable web content resorts to basic text matching. Those types of web content that tend to yield poor quality search results, so they know these things, and due to the few hyperlink references, short duration or highly repetitive content are grouped into a separate search corpus. Search results are then identified from the search corpus based on the quality of matching of the search query terms, individual documents. The search results having the most text matches can be scored ranked in the quantitative terms by relative goodness of match. So they criticize certain types of methodologies here, but at the end of the day, actually, they try to create the best possible set together. For instance, if I read here, calculating the search criteria categories scored using a degree of match for the search criteria based on the association strengths of the word and the word phrase associations, determining an aggregate category match score using the document categories score and the search criteria categories, criteria score. So if I just summarize it, if you read all these things, you will realize that they are grouping and categorizing the documents, and they label all of them together, so that actually similar documents, even if they don't have that much hyperlink, even if it is not, even if it is a new document, still it can have a higher chance. This is a primitive patent, but still I can tell that it is active and it is expanded before or assigned multiple times and etc. So they still keep it and they pay for it. So methods and systems for adjusting a scoring measure based on query breadth. I read it, sorry. Okay, I know that you are tired, but I guess we already came to the end. So identifying related information given content or presenting related information in association with content related advertisement. First is about advertisement and about advertisement satisfaction, but again it is actually about understanding the query and the context and the topicality. So when I talk about semantics, do not think that search engine uses semantics only for satisfying the organic searches. They mainly use it for actually paid search, but using for understanding that part will be helpful. Large language models in machine translation. So this is important to understand actually large language models concept rather than machine translation from my point of view, because in these specific patterns they actually explain what kinds of models can be used for translation purposes. And once we have these things, they can actually remove the barrier between the languages. And large language models, since they have certain types of, or let's say enough capacity, the semantics or the certain types of entity attribute paths and the patterns, they will be helping them across the languages, which will be helpful again for uniting the multiple search behaviors or data centers as well. Jeffrey Dean actually is an important and in him. Cross-lingual indexing, again connected to the machine translation here, because we try to take information from multiple languages and then we try to connect these things to each other, as appears in this part, like overview and history of internal search engines and search engine tutorial. Then here we have course description, background, then we have the technology, then we have the background. So we unite all these pages across languages and across documents and sources to create a better information graph, which will be evolving to representative document selection for a set of duplicate documents. I believe you remember that I have mentioned this thing actually from my YouTube channel by telling you that be a representative source. This is about that. But there is one interesting thing here. If you're a representative source and if one of the represented ones get links, they give the page rank increase to the cluster leader. So this is called link inversion. And if there are multiple similar documents, we actually did some experiments for that, but there are some other experiments for that. Basically, imagine that you created your own documents, 6 or 7 different documents, highly similar to each other. One of them has higher page rank, only that one ranks, the others don't. And then you link the others, and you realize that the one that represent all these documents, it starts to rank even higher, just because the overall cluster score, overall cluster value has increased. That's why this category section is important too. Since I am tired, I am not able to tell everything. That's why I tell you to read these things as much as possible. The last one here, sorry, I already mentioned that. I will talk about our web users are really Markovian too. This is the search I have done. So in 41 minutes, I was able to actually explain you all these importance of predicates, then how we can actually connect these things to semantic content networks. And I have explained many concepts and definitions and examples from the Google's own inventions. You can check all these things. Then we will be publishing a few more videos, and the first testimonial videos will be coming. Use this pre-training as much as possible for yourself. All these documents, download them to your computer, keep them with yourself. From time to time, you can read them from Kindle or from your phone. Believe me, after a point, you will realize that they always tell the same thing. Patterns are not that much complicated. You don't have to read even everything here, to be honest. The beginning part is already really clear. You can just read for detailed description. This part is important. Second most important part is actually usually at the end. But first, check the inventors for these areas. If you didn't get the detailed description that much, look back to these sections and check this number. If it says 100, it means that there is 100 inside detailed description, which means that, like this, 106 here, parallel corpus. So it explains the parallel corpus includes a collection of text in the source language, blah blah, like English corresponding translation in one or more target languages like French. The parallel corpus can include a number of different sources of the text, including web pages and news articles, etc. Then we go to the probably 108 here, translation mode, and explains what it does. If you check the diagram together with these areas, it will be very much more clear. Not that much hard, you just read. Or you just use ChatGPT to summarize these things. It will be helpful too. I will do a video for that too, but let's launch this first, because despite this is like New Year Eve or etc., I still continue to give all these details as much as possible. So, my people, I love you all. Thanks for listening to me. I'm a little tired, but we will see each other again in the new SEO case studies. Then we will be free and you will get your community to help you each other as much as possible. Thank you for listening to me, and see you in the next ones. Namaste.